You'd waste your last drop of fuel on her? The vendor sneered, his scaled face twitching with amusement. His yellowed fangs flashed under the flickering neon lights that bathed the alley in pulsing red. She's feral. She's dangerous. She's meat. Adias Vaughn didn't flinch. He stood shirtless beneath the steel awnings of the slave quarter, sweat clinging to his battle-scarred skin, a fuel canister hanging from his belt. One move away from vanishing into the black. One last errand before disappearing for good. But then he saw her. Locked behind rusted iron bars, the alien girl sat still, like the calm before a seismic storm. Her skin shimmered violet under the shifting lights, taut over lithe, honed muscle. Her long, silver-white hair clung to her shoulders, tangled and unwashed, and her piercing eyes, almost glowing, tracked every movement outside the cage. She was barefoot, chained, barely clothed in torn desert wraps, but held herself with the poise of royalty and the fury of a beast. Zirai, the slaver, hissed the name like a curse, tried to kill her last buyer with his own spine. We were gonna cut her up, just waiting on a bidder dumb enough to offer a price. Irias's voice was quiet but firm. Hey, I'm not bidding. He unclipped the synth fuel canister from his belt and dropped it at the vendor's feet. Full, refined, enough to run a skiff halfway across the moon belt, enough to escape this place, enough to start over. The vendor blinked. You serious? Arez stepped closer to the cage. Open it. Gasps and low murmurs rolled through the nearby crowd. Traders and cutthroats gathered around like hyenas at a feast. Someone muttered, "That's war fuel. Guy's mad." Others laughed, cheered, even placed side bets on how fast he'd die. The slaver shrugged, greed winning over doubt. Fine by me. The lock clicked, cage groaned. And then the girl moved, fast as she was on her feet, crouched like a predator, her yellow eyes narrowing on Aria's, as if measuring how best to strike. Her lips curled into a snarl. Touch me, she growled, and you die, human. Riaz raised his hand slowly. I didn't buy you to touch you. She stilled, suspicious. I bought you to free you. Her expression didn't change. If anything, it darkened. She didn't believe him. Why would she? After what they'd done to her?
After what they called her? Feral?
Monster. Meat. She didn't speak again. Stepped out of the cage with a regal grace that contrasted violently with the bruises on her arms and the blood caked on her knees. The crowd fell silent. Something about the way she walked like she owned the very ground beneath her shut everyone up. Eris led her away without another word. They passed neon signs blinking sale, and flesh, and discounted across metal shacks. Creatures from 20 different worlds eyed them warily, some whispering, others baring teeth. They were almost to the edge of the quarter when someone shouted, "Hey! That purple bitch is marked property. You just stole from the Sevak Syndicate." Riaz didn't stop walking. He'd expected this. 3 armed guards emerged, rifles raised. Before Riaz could draw, Zirai was already in motion. She dropped low, swept one guard's legs out from under him, then used the fall to yank his weapon and slam it against the second skull. She didn't kill them, though she could have. The last hesitated just long enough for Arias to deck him with a solid blow to the jaw. The syndicate wouldn't let this go. Arias knew he had just signed his death warrant. And hers. They ducked into a back corridor behind a rusted food stall, breaths ragged and hearts pounding. Zirai pressed her back to the wall, glaring at him. "You're stupid," she snapped. "Should have let them eat me." "Maybe," Arias muttered, checking his sidearm. "But I don't regret it." "Why?" He looked up, meeting her gaze. "Because you're not what they say you are." "I am worse," she said, stepping into the light, and for a moment, he believed her. But beneath the steel in her voice was something else. Wounded pride. A desperate edge of someone who had been thrown away too many times and taught not to trust anyone who offered kindness. They found temporary shelter in an old cargo hangar on the city's lower level. Arias sealed the doors with a code lock and rationed out water. Zirai sat with her back to the far wall, eyes never leaving him. He offered her half a protein bar. She didn't move. "Eat," he said. I don't eat human trash, then starve. Your call. A minute passed. Then another. She snatched the bar without looking and devoured it like she hadn't eaten in days. He knew better than to ask what she'd been through, but as the silence stretched, she spoke again. You're not a traitor. You fight like a soldier. I was, he said. For who? No one anymore. She was quiet, but not cold. Her anger was still there, simmering. But she was beginning to study him not as a threat, but as a mystery she hadn't solved yet. He leaned against the wall, watching the lights flicker overhead. What were you before they caged you? Asked. Her answer was a whisper, a weapon. A cold breeze crept down his spine. He believed her. Before she could say more, a siren wailed in the distance. The syndicate had found their trail. Iria stood, tossing her a pistol. She caught it one-handed without hesitation. She looked down at the weapon, then up at him. Trust me with this? Do I have a choice? Zariah's lips twitched into something close to a smirk. You're stupider than I thought. Together, they stepped out into the dying city, ready to run, to fight, or both. He didn't know what he'd gotten himself into, but he knew one thing. He wasn't walking away from her. Not now, not ever. They moved through the lower decks like ghosts, quiet, sharp, and dangerously aware of every step. The underbelly of Noctheron was a maze of forgotten passageways and pressurized tunnels, where artificial gravity flickered and oxygen levels dropped just enough to make breathing a chore. The lights overhead dimmed and surged in unreliable pulses, casting long shadows that danced over the grime-covered walls. Once meant for cargo drones and hidden smuggling routes, this part of the station had become a no-man's land, inhabited only by the desperate, the dying, those running from something worse. Zariah led the way, her movements agile, cat-like. Iris watched her from behind, marveling at how easily she adapted to unfamiliar terrain. Her bare feet made no sound against the metal grates. Her senses were sharper than his. Every time he reached for his weapon, she had already marked the threat. 3 times they encountered scavenger gangs. 3 times Zariah ended the confrontation before it began, with either a snapped neck, a disarmed weapon, or the kind of glare that turned grown aliens into cowards. They weren't just running anymore. They were being hunted, and Arias knew exactly why. Zariah wasn't some runaway slave. She was a living weapon, a political pawn, and if rumors were even half true, an experiment gone rogue, he needed answers. But more urgently, he needed them. Alive in a side corridor beneath the old turbine housing unit, they paused. Arias checked his portable scanner short range. Pings showed movement behind them. Fast-moving, coordinated. Syndicate hunters. We've got 10 minutes. Maybe less, he said, sliding the scanner back into his vest. Zariah didn't respond. Instead, she was staring at a rusted-out panel near the wall, her fingers tracing the pattern on its surface. What is it? He asked. This, she whispered, is where I was sold the first time. Iria stepped closer. The area was scorched, patched in places with rough welds. It looked like there had once been a lab setup, here glass panels now shattered. A surgical table overturned and forgotten. Her jaw clenched. They told me I was designed to survive any battlefield. Heal faster, fight harder, smarter. Her voice was flat, but her fists trembled. But when I refused to kill children during the purge, they called me defective. Iris exhaled slowly. Then the syndicate bought me 4 parts. He didn't say anything. There was nothing that would make that truth easier to swallow. They wanted to strip out what made me. Me, but I broke free. I ran. I've been running since, and you kept fighting. I didn't know how to stop. Their eyes met in the dim light. There was no softness in hers, but something deeper had crept in trust. Just enough to... Let him in a sliver. You should have left me in that cage, Arias Vaughn. Yeah, he muttered. Probably. Footsteps echoed through the chamber. Boots, at least 6 pairs. He turned, weapon drawn. Zariah already had her stolen pistol in. Hand, front or back, she asked. Split. I take the front. You cover our six. She nodded and they moved. The syndicate troops weren't subtle. Flashlights bobbed in the darkness, revealing armored figures sweeping the corridor with plasma rifles. They had masks with thermal optics and neural links. Professional, efficient, brutal, but they weren't ready for her. Zirai darted forward, leaping off the wall, spinning through the air like a blade made flesh. She landed on one soldier's back, snapped his neck, grabbed his rifle, and opened fire in one clean motion. Eris flanked from the other side, aiming for joints, weak points. He dropped two before they could fire and ducked behind a maintenance panel as plasma bolts lit up the hallway. Grenades bounced toward them. Zirai kicked one back, timed perfectly. It exploded in the squad's midst, flinging bodies and debris into the walls. The last syndicate hunter tried to run. Zirai pinned him to the ground with a knee on his throat. "What do they want?" she hissed. He struggled, gagging until a riz approached and pulled off the helmet. "Answer her," he said, pressing his pistol to the man's chest. They want her back. For the program, they rebuilt it. New name? Same orders. You're tagged. They won't stop. She's priority one now. Zuri's expression went blank. Then she crushed his windpipe with one hand and stood. Eris stared. "You didn't have?" "Two, yes I did." He let it go. They had to keep moving. They found temporary shelter in a forgotten surveillance room tucked behind a fusion waste vent. The systems were dead, but the walls were soundproofed. Safe for now, Iria slumped against the console, breathing hard. Blood streaked across his left arm from a grazing wound. But it wasn't serious. Zirai approached silently and knelt beside him. Her fingers hovered over the injury. He tensed, expecting her to pull back. Instead, she reached for a strip of cloth from her hip wrap and began cleaning the wound with mechanical precision. "You're not trained for this," he murmured. "I learned." On the run, he watched her hands. They were scarred, calloused, built to destroy, but capable of surprising gentleness. "I've seen what humans are like," she said quietly. "Most of you are liars, slavers, weak, but you." She looked up, golden eyes unreadable. "You confuse me?" "I get that a lot," he said, managing a faint grin. Zirai didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. "There's a ship docked on the southern arm," he continued. "A smuggler I know. She owes me. If we can reach it, we might have a shot. To escape. To disappear." Zirai sat back on her heels. "What if I don't want to disappear? Then what do you want?" She hesitated. "I want to stop running." Silence stretched between them. It wasn't the silence of fear or tension, it was something else's recognition. He understood now. Zirai wasn't just a survivor. She was tired of surviving. She wanted something more, a purpose, a reason. And for the first time in years, Arius felt the same. "We'll get out," he promised. "Together." "Right." She nodded once. Not a thank you. Just an agreement between warriors. A partnership forged in fire. Outside, alarms blared again. The syndicate was coming, but now they would be ready. Zirai stood at the edge of the collapsed corridor, her chest rising and falling with slow, calculated breaths. The world around her trembled, pipes groaned, alarms screamed, and firelight flickered in broken glass. The syndicate's net was closing fast. Irias limped beside her, his left leg dragging slightly from the shrapnel wound taken during their last run through the maintenance shaft. He gritted his teeth, hand clamped on a makeshift tourniquet, but he didn't complain. Pain had long ago become background noise for men like him. Their destination was less than 200 meters away. One of the syndicate's old docking gates abandoned, unguarded, rotting from decades of neglect. But according to Arius's map, a private launch tunnel connected directly to a smuggler's hangar, the last safe route off. "Not care and tell me this friend of yours didn't sell you out," Zirai said, narrowing her eyes at the bulkhead ahead. "She's a survivor. If she did, it wasn't personal." Zirai tilted her head. "You trust her?" "I don't trust anyone," Arius said, "but I owe her. And she hates the syndicate more than either of us." He reached the security panel and began hacking. Through the last firewall, Zeray kept watch behind him, eyes sharp, body poised like a drawn bow. Every sound, every flicker of motion, her muscles tensed. Then a sharp click. The bulkhead hissed open. Beyond it, the dim tunnel loomed, flickering amber lights, old fuel stains, and silence. Too silent. Wait. Late, they stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous clang. Red lights flashed along the walls. From above, gas hissed down from recessed vents. Arias lunged for his masks. Arias already held her breath, instincts razor sharp. Then a voice echoed from the intercom, smooth and venomous. Well, I was starting to think you two weren't going to make it. Arias's jaw clenched. Riva. The screen flickered on above the tunnel entrance, revealing the face of a woman with dark hair braided in coils, her eyes painted with silver sigils. Riva doll. Smuggler. Ex-merc. The woman who once saved Iris's life in a war zone now sold him out. I didn't want to do this, Ari, she said, almost apologetically. But they offered me something I couldn't refuse. What? Syndicate pardon? Or did they promise you her? Riva smiled. You know the answer. Zerai stepped forward, voice like cold iron. You'll regret this. Doubt it? She's worth more than any starship, more than the lives of 100 men. Riva waved a hand, and the chamber's floor panels opened. Armed drones rose from the grated ground. Half a dozen, all bristling with shock rods and suppressor nets, designed for one thing: containment. Zerai didn't wait. She vaulted forward, twisting midair as two drones launched nets in her direction. One missed entirely. The other caught her leg, but she spun, yanked hard, and flung the drone into the wall. Sparks exploded. Eris covered her flank. Taking down a drone with precise shots to its sensory array, Zerai tore through the next two machines with brutal efficiency. Her hands a blur of motion. She moved like someone who had nothing left to lose, but the drones kept coming. One pinned Arias to the wall with a stun net. He screamed, muscles locking up as electricity surged. Zerai leaped between him and the final drone, ripping the emitter from its socket and jamming it into the wall to overload the circuit. The chamber went dark. Arias collapsed, gasping. Zero dropped beside him, her hands shaking, but not from fear, from rage. She betrayed us, she said quietly. For money. Eris coughed. I told you not to trust anyone. You don't even trust me, do you? Her voice wasn't accusing, just ... tired. He looked at her. Really looked at her. The bruises, the cuts, the raw fight in her spirit. I didn't, he admitted. But I do now. She blinked. His hand reached for hers. She didn't pull away, but then explosions rocked the chamber. A section of the ceiling above the launch corridor buckled and crashed down, flames licking the edges of the airlock. They had minutes before total collapse. We have to move, Arias said. He limped forward. Supported by Zerai, their bodies closed now, breathing each other's pain. She took most of his weight with little effort, her strength compensating for the wound he refused to acknowledge. They pushed through the emergency hatch behind them. Riva's voice crackled again through the broken comms system. Ah! You can't. Run forever. They'll never stop hunting her. You'll never save her. Zerai turned back, fury in her voice. I don't need saving. I need vengeance. They emerged into the hangar. It wasn't empty. Two syndicate troopers stood between them and the shuttle, a sleek, black market runner half-fueled and prepped for launch. Eris lifted his pistol. One trooper aimed. Zerai was faster. She ducked low, rolled under the plasma. Fire, and drove her shoulder into the soldier's chest with a sickening crunch. He hit the ground and didn't get up. The second raised a blade. Arias shot him in the leg, then the chest. The hangar fell silent again. Arias collapsed into the pilot's chair, gritting his teeth. Coordinates set. Zerai entered the override. Codes from memory she'd clearly used ships like this before. How do you know syndicate flight patterns? He asked. I escaped one of their ships once, she said, taking the co-pilot's seat beside him. I never forget the design of a prison. The ship roared to life. Explosions behind them tore through the launch bay as the hangar gave way. Zirai didn't look back. Arius did for just a second. Riva stood in the collapsing doorway, her face twisted in fury and disbelief as the engines ignited and the smuggler ship lifted into the storm-filled skies of Noctherin. For now, they were free. But as the stars filled the cockpit window, neither of them spoke. Zirai finally broke the silence. They'll follow us. I know. I'm not safe to be near. I'm not trying to be safe. She turned to him slowly, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned back in her seat, and for the first time since they met, she let her eyes close. The stars bled red on the edge of the Keverus rift. Eris Vaughn stared into the swirling light outside the viewport, his fingers tight around the flight stick of the smuggler ship they barely escaped in. Beside him, Zirai sat cross-legged, silent, the glow of the starfield reflecting in her golden eyes. She hadn't said much since their takeoff from Noctherin. She didn't have to. They both knew it wasn't over, Syndicate. Ships had already pinged them twice. Each time, Arias had scrambled their transponder codes and punched deeper into uncharted space. But the Syndicate didn't forget, especially not when the thing they lost was a living weapon of galactic importance. They were coming, and Zirai was done running. They built me for war, she said softly. Trained me to kill on command. I never wanted it, never asked for any of it. Arias glanced at her. But you survived. She turned her head slowly. That's not the same. As living, his jaw tightened. I know. She stood and walked toward the starboard weapons console. Her body moved with calm confidence, though her eyes betrayed a storm. She pulled up the holographic display. Dozens of red dots appeared. Syndicate trackers. 5 ships. En route. They're using a Hunter AI, she said. They've locked onto my biosignature. Even if we destroy one, the rest will adapt. So what are you thinking? She looked at him, the faintest flicker of a smile on her lips. I'm thinking we take the fight to them. Arius blinked. You want to go back? Not to Noctherin, to the core. Their data hub, their cloning vats, their weapon archives. Destroy all of it. Burn the program to ash. He leaned back, arms crossed. That's suicide. No, she said. That's justice. Silence filled the cockpit. Then Ira slowly nodded. Then let's give them a reason to fear their own creation. Their plan was madness. Hijack a Syndicate courier ship near the Kellen Drift, slip into the data fortress under false credentials. Use Zariah's neural imprint still recognized by their systems to access the heart of the program. Detonate the quantum drive at the center. A clean wipe, if it worked. It would cripple the Syndicate's entire experimental slave soldier division. They'd be vaporized in one of the most secure facilities in the galaxy. But they didn't hesitate. The heist began in the cold blackness of the drift field. A damaged courier limped between asteroid shadows, unaware of the silent predator stalking. Zirai boarded it first, wearing the armor of a fallen Syndicate trooper. Her hair tucked into a helmet, her violet skin hidden beneath layers of synth plating. Iris followed close behind, breaching the side hatch. The guards never saw it coming. 3 minutes later, they had the ship. 8 minutes after that, the nav course was set, straight into hell. The facility hovered over a gas giant, chained to the upper atmosphere by massive ion tethers. Looked more like a floating fortress than a databank, bristling with weapons, swarming with drones, and home to the Syndicate's most heavily guarded secrets. But Zirai walked in like she belonged. The retinal scan accepted her. The biotag confirmed it. No one questioned her presence. Arias stayed close, posing as a Syndicate tech. He carried the virus core and explosive-laced data spike, designed to melt every system from the inside out. They passed labs filled with Vatscopies. Of Zero, at various stages of growth, floating in gel, tethered by wires. Her jaw clenched. They were building me again, she whispered. Again and again. Arias touched her shoulder. Not anymore. They reached the core. The central chamber glowed with cold light, dozens of servers humming like a heartbeat. Cameras watched from every angle. One mistake would mean alarms. Zirai moved to the terminal. I'll need 45 seconds. She said. Eris turned to guard the doorway. He didn't see the betrayal coming. A plasma bolt seared through the air, striking him in the shoulder. He dropped, groaning, gun slipping from his hand. Zirai turned, just in time, to see the shooter step from the shadows. Reeva. Burned, bleeding, alive. Did you really think I wouldn't follow you? She sneered. You ruined my entire career. My ship. My deals. Zirai raised her weapon. Riva aimed back. I warned him not to trust anyone, Zira said flatly. I warned you not to believe in monsters. The standoff lasted a second. Then Zirai lunged. The two women collided weapons. Clattering to the floor, fists flew, blood spilled. Riva slammed Zirai against the wall. Knife flashing, but Zirai twisted, elbowed her in the throat, drove her into the data core. Electricity arced. Riva screamed. Zirai let her fall, unconscious. The virus spike was already uploading. Eri has crawled to his feet, blood pouring down his arm. You okay? Zirai didn't answer. She turned to him slowly. I have to stay. What if I leave? The failsafe won't trigger. It's tied to my DNA only. I can overload the core manually. Rhea stared at her, heart slamming. No, there's another way. There's not, Zirai. I'm not running anymore. She stepped close. Her hands touched his face. Blood smeared her cheek. Sweat clung to her brow, but her voice was steady. I never believed in love, she whispered. For something like me, but now ... I understand. Iris's breath caught. You saved me, Ariasvan. Not just from them, from me. His hands grasped hers tightly. Come with me. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Tears shimmered in her golden eyes. She kissed him. It was fierce, final, like the ignition of a star. Then she shoved him backward. A force field snapped between them. Nosy Rai smiled through the glass. I was born in a cage. But I'll die free. The explosion lit the sky like a second sun. Arias survived. Barely a stolen escape pod carried him beyond the blast zone. He drifted for 3 days in silence before a trade convoy found him. They asked him what happened. He never told them. But the Syndicate's facility was gone. Their program, their weapons, their copy saw ashes in space. And somewhere, deep inside, Arias carried her with him. Her memory, her fire, her freedom. Years passed. He rebuilt his ship. Named it Zira. And when he stared into the stars, didn't feel alone. Because she had given him more than his life. She had given him a reason to keep living.